Hello, I'm Chris Fowler, and welcome to Sportcentury. He's been described as a snake oil salesman, a shameless huckster, an evil genius, and worse. Not even the master of hype, P.T. Barnum, had more mischief up his sleeve than fight promoter Don King. But few of his products achieved the same level of fame and fortune as King's favorite client, himself.
I'm a promoter of the people, for the people, and by the people, and my magic lies in my people ties.
Like me or dislike me, I present the best shows unequivocally, undeniably, unsurpassed.
Only in America could a Don King happen. A true human interest story.
King is the last guy standing who promotes by force of personality.
I want you to buy. Close second and clean my
By his celebrity.
You're a star. You know you can do anything. Any profession you want. How about boxing? You got it. Let me sign you up.
By his con.
I'm fighting for white and black alike, for any of those who are the downtrodden.
This guy could sell surfboards in Iowa. He's persuasive, he's enthralling, he's one of the greatest hustlers in the history of the world.
I asked him, what is the one thing that you get off on most? And he said that a street hustler from Cleveland can outsmart all those Jewish lawyers who went to Harvard and beat them at their own game.
There is no better seductor than Don King. He makes you the object of his attention. He's a big person physically. He knows how to enhance his bigness. It's pretty easy to feel quite taken and overpowered.
You'd see the Don King in public, the big smile, the hair standing straight up. But in private, Don King is a very different man. His eyes grow very cold.
After a press conference he had conducted, and I asked him a question, and he went crazy. And he threatened to kill me, and he called me scum.
As far as I'm concerned, you're a scumbag. I don't have no use for you at all. You may be the greatest if you think you're the greatest, but to me, to you as a man to man, you are nothing.
Richie Giacchetti was Larry Holmes's trainer. Giacchetti told me he was calling from a phone booth on the corner and that he was afraid for his life. He truly believed that Don King, through underworld connections, had put out a contract.
I was once offered $30,000 to fight, you know what I'm saying? Don King says, I'll give you 10,000. I said, you crazy. I said, no, Don, I'm not gonna do that. He said, Larry, if you go anywhere, I'll break your leg. Basically, that's how he intimidated a lot of fighters. Fighters in general was pretty afraid of Don.
Meldrick Taylor, I had a return fight with Chavez. Meldrick was getting $1,300,000 for the fight. Don gave Meldrick a check for $300,000. Meldrick said, why didn't you go to the police? He said, Don King would have me killed.
One time, the fighter challenged Don to a fight, and Don stood up and was prepared to do it. And then I think in the back of this fighter's mind, it may have clicked, hey, this man killed somebody, so maybe I better leave him alone.
Don King killed not once, but twice. In 1954, it was ruled justifiable homicide when he shot a man who stole the receipts of one of his numbers houses. But 12 years later, when the 34-year-old was involved in a second killing, he would face serious consequences.
Sam Garrett was a tubercular street hustler. King believed Sam Garrett owed him $600. King hunted Garrett down in a bar on Cedar Avenue in the middle of the day. He pulled Garrett out of the bar and beat him to death.
Here is a big 6'3" fella, 230 pounds, stopping a guy 140 pounds who's sickly to death over, I think, a $600 bet.
As he was laying there, I bent over him and I put my face right next to his. He only said few words. He says, Don, I'll pay you the money. And that was it. He died 5 days later.
King pled self-defense to second-degree murder. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning a conviction. But the judge reduced the charge to manslaughter. King would serve 4 years at the Marion Correctional Institution in Ohio.
The warden at the prison said Don King didn't serve time, time served him. Don King totally educated himself while he was in prison.
It was Donald believing that he could do better than to be a numbers man running in the streets of Cleveland. I think that caused Donald to take college classes and to read everything that he could get his hands on while he was in the penitentiary.
As his prison time slowly melted away, King pondered his fate beyond the walls. Then, one night in 1971, the seed of an idea was planted as he listened to a heavyweight title fight on the radio.
On March 8, 1971, it was the fight of the century between Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali in Madison Square Garden. People thought that that might change boxing, and it did, although they didn't know how it would. There was an inmate in an Ohio prison named Don King who heard that fight.
And he was betting cigarettes on Ali to win, and Frazier won that fight. 4 years later, he was promoting the Thriller in Manila with Ali and Frazier, and it is quite a meteoric rise from the penitentiary to the penthouse.
The trip began on August 20th, 1931 in Cleveland. When King was 10, his steelworker father, Clarence, was killed in an explosion. Hattie King was left to raise 6 children on her own.
He was a hustler. He was always very good at bringing money home. My mother called him Donald Duck because he always had a gift of gab.
I talk a blue streak. I wouldn't want to get into a debate with him because you couldn't get a word in edgewise.
But King was not all talk. By the time he graduated from John Adams High School, he was already moving up in the numbers racket. And by the mid-1960s, King was living in the affluent suburb of Shaker Heights with his second wife, Henrietta, who had been a numbers operator herself.
In the early and mid-60s, Don King controlled the numbers rackets in Cleveland. He was one of the few black numbers guys who had a coalition with the Italian organized crime people.
Don King carried a gun. Don King carried tremendous amounts of cash. He was a gangster. King owned a nightclub. Dinah Washington, B.B. King, all the great black performers played at Don King's club.
King's little empire dissolved after he was jailed for the fatal stomping of Sam Garrett. In June of 1972, 9 months after being paroled, the 40-year-old ex-con prevailed upon a friend, singer Lloyd Price, to arrange an audience with Muhammad Ali, who agreed to do a benefit in Cleveland.
Tell them all to get the tickets and come on out. 4 men, charity for Forest City Hospital.
We put together 4 fighters to box 10 rounds in exhibition. We did $85,000 gate, which was a tremendous amount of money for an exhibition. The hospital got $1,500 out of that $85,000.
Using Ali as his boarding pass, King jumped on boxing's high-dollar juggernaut. Aligning himself with a company that promoted Joe Frazier's 1973 defense of the heavyweight title against George Foreman in Jamaica, King worked both sides of the street.
King comes out of the dressing room with Frazier. He's patting Frazier on his robe. You're my man. You're gonna kill this guy. I'm with you.
Frazier's knees buckled. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
In 2 rounds, Foreman demolishes Frazier.
It is over. It is over. George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world.
Now he's with Foreman. I'm with you, champ. You're my man. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy is like, whatever work, boom, he's on that side of the ring.
Taking his promotional magic to a new level, King spun a deal that straddled the globe and reaped millions in 1974. The place, Kinshasa, Zaire. The event, the Rumble in the Jungle.
The Rumble in the Jungle is Don King's masterpiece. He told Ali that he was getting $5.1 million and Foreman was getting $5 million. He told Foreman he was getting $5.1 million and Ali was getting $5 million.
He was working both sides of him, but he was really making favor with Foreman because everybody thought Foreman was going to be the guy for a long time.
Behind the hoopla and hype, King had a secret. He didn't have the financing to stage the fight.
King, the genius con artist, convinced Mobutu, the dictator of Zaire, to put up $10 million for the fight, to pay for roads, to pay for improvements in the stadium.
Don was able to sell an idea, a concept. This is a way to put your country on the map. Who knew about Kinshasa, Zaire before that fight?
Ali wins the fight. Don started to work on Ali. You should be with me. I helped you get your title back. Give me a chance to deliver. If I don't deliver, kick me to the curb.
King delivered, promoting a number of Ali's title bouts. In 1980, he coaxed the 38-year-old former champ out of retirement to face Larry Holmes. His once consummate skills gone, Ali lost by a TKO in the 11th round. If the greatest had been kicked to the curb, the insult did not end in the ring.
King underpays Ali by $1.2 million. Ali files a lawsuit. King then convinces Jeremiah Shabazz, who was Ali's teacher in the Islamic faith, to deliver $50,000 in cash to Ali in a hospital room in Los Angeles. Jeremiah made Ali sign a release ending the lawsuit. He should have won. The bigger Don King got, the smarter he got. He always knew the government was watching him. He knew he was constantly under surveillance.
Today I'm standing in the glory of the Lord, giving me the opportunity and the privilege to really exemplify what democracy is all about.
Don King approached ABC Sports in late 1976 concerning a new concept to have all the leading fighters in the United States fight in a tournament to declare champions in each of the weight divisions.
And that thing was a rat's nest of corruption. Marvelous Marvin Hagler was excluded because he wasn't connected with Don King.
The rankings were fixed. A fighter who hadn't fought in 2 years was suddenly ranked 6th in America because he kicked back money to Don King's organization.
Even before the first bout took place in January of 1977, ABC had gotten wind of improprieties.
And the whole thing blew up when a decision went against a heavyweight named Scott Ledoux.
That's how boxing got ruined, right there. Why? Because we're not owned by them people. Don King, Al Braverman, and Patty Flood.
We had to pull the plug on the tournament because the rumors that we had heard that there were kickbacks involved, phony records involved, turned out to be factual.
Despite the scandal, King continued to thrive over the next 2 decades as boxing's most powerful promoter. In 1997, his earnings were so large that he reportedly paid the IRS $30 million in taxes. But through the years, he was a moving target for law enforcement.
The United States Attorney's Office in New York tried for years to nail Don King, spent millions of dollars investigating him. They couldn't nail him.
He is smarter than everybody else. He's smarter than the prosecutors. He was smarter than Rudy Giuliani.
Today, a federal grand jury indicted Don King and Constance Harper, president and vice president of Don King Productions, in 23 counts involving the diversion of over $1 million in corporate receipts from Don King Productions.
Don didn't get convicted because Don didn't personally do that stuff. He always instructed somebody else to do it.
In the 1985 trial, King was acquitted while his associate, Constance Harper, was convicted. In 1998, federal prosecutors charged King with cheating Lloyd's of London out of $350,000 in training expenses for a 1991 Julio Cesar Chavez fight that was canceled. Again, King was acquitted.
If you look at all the things that Don King has overcome legally, and we're talking about a slew of things, that he is definitely the Teflon Don of sports.
King's leverage over fighters transcended the boxing arena, as he showed that even in civil court, he held all of the cards.
You got more money than you, got more lawyers than you. They keep you in court. And a lot of the young fighters don't have that kind of money to stay in court.
Don gets sued a lot yet there is some settlement agreement, and then they go on and continue to do business. Because ultimately, the fighter has to fight to make money. So they're really the victims.
A good part of Don's brilliance and success is his relentlessness and his persistence when he wants a fighter. He'll buy them a car, he'll call the fighter's mother, he'll call the fighter's father.
After I turned Greg Page professional, he starts to go around me and gets to Greg Page's father. He's sending somebody with a briefcase full of money. The father, well, he had a heart attack and he passes. Don comes to Louisville to the funeral, starts to look like he's crying, and says he had conversations with Mr. Page. I want to leave Greg in your hands, Don. And they bought it.
Nearly everybody bought what King was selling because there was no alternative.
King's control of boxing was so extreme that if you really didn't sign with Don King, how in the world were you ever going to get your chance?
Majority of the fighters, especially when they're younger, they don't think about money. Don showed these young fighters that if you get with me, you can become the champ of the world.
He put them in a situation, he cut them off from their support system. He basically becomes your to suck on. You feel trapped.
I signed up with Don because he was the only man putting something on the table. But he was giving me a couple $100 a week to keep me in the gym, keep me training. Those things he used down the road. So every time I fought, I would get 50% of my money.
It seeps his little devious venom in there somehow, and he got you gun-ho and crazy, and you don't know if you're coming or going.
If King's ticket to fame and fortune was Muhammad Ali, his biggest paydays would come from Mike Tyson, the future heavyweight champ.
So excited! This is just so great, man, I'm telling you. Seth Abraham called me up on the phone one day. He said, I got an idea, Big D. He said, let's put together a series to bring about one champ. He said, everybody's clamoring for it. I'm daring enough to do it. I said, well, let's go with it.
In 1986, King staged a heavyweight unification tournament for HBO, showcasing a prodigy not among his stable. But that would change.
Tyson suffered a series of emotionally destabilizing setbacks. Cus D'Amato, his founding trainer, died in 1985. Jimmy Jacobs died in 1988. He was an emotional wreck.
King was at Jimmy's funeral circling like a vulture. King moved and got his talons into Tyson.
King then began to fill him in with this brainwashing about how he should be with a black promoter and all the terrible things that I was doing to him, lies.
Everything was black, black power, power to the people, but his whole life was white, his whole staff is white.
King signed Tyson in October of 1988, then gained the troubled fighter's trust by protecting his $35 million in assets from Tyson's estranged wife, Robin Givens. If the partnership gleaned hundreds of millions over the next decade, the split was less than even.
I never had a lawyer in my best interest unless it was his lawyer. My accountant was his accountant.
Don would write a check. He put the description on it, and it would say OTT or CBMT. CBMT meant charge back Mike Tyson. OTT meant off the top. What he would do is, okay, Mike, your purse was $20 million. We had $10 million of expenses, so there's $10 million left, and then we split it.
Despite earning huge purses under King's watch, Tyson's emotions were operating near the poverty level. He fell on February 10th, 1990, to a 42-to-1 underdog.
Unbelievable! Buster Douglas is the new heavyweight champion of the world!
What you do to Mike Tyson, man? He got with you, next thing I know, he's crawling on the ground looking for his mouthpiece. He's broke.
$120 million. Ain't no other athlete alive got that kind of money in 18 months. You can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. You know what I mean? I still got all mine.
King sailed on while Tyson sank even further. A highly publicized rape conviction in 1992 netted him 3 years in prison. When Tyson was released, King jumped back on the gravy train, promoting 6 fights for purses totaling $140 million.
I found out who someone who I believed was my surrogate father, my brother, my blood figure. And he turns out to be the true Uncle Tom, the true sellout. He did more bad to black people than any white promoter ever did in the history of boxing.
Tyson with me was making 30 million, 40 million a fight. Now he's left me. If I'm the bad guy, why ain't he making some money?
The night before Tyson got out of prison in Indiana, King convinced him to sign a long-term contract. The mistake Mike Tyson made twice. He went with Don King in 1988, and then in 1995, he went back to King. Those two choices are Tyson's responsibility.
In 1998, Tyson slapped King with a $100 million lawsuit, claiming the promoter had cheated him out of tens of millions. The action is still pending.
Regardless of whether they cast aspersions, castigate, vilify, or character assassinate, I'm going to continue, because the greatest thing anyone can have is to have his family by him.
I know his wife would love for him to come home and sit back and enjoy time with her and the family, his grandkids. But I don't see that happening. I see Don promoting until the very last breath.
He still has people around him that you would not want in your home. He's never really left that corner in Cleveland where he ran the numbers.
We were fighting publicly, and I hadn't seen King in a while. All of a sudden, I hear out of nowhere,
Lou DiBella, my main man! How you doing, Lou? I still love you.
and my wife turned around, she goes, he doesn't seem to dislike you. And I was like, even if he did, you wouldn't know it.
While Don King was looking to finance a movie about his life and times, a car accident landed him in the hospital. But that didn't stop him. According to a partner of his, Don Elbaum, 2 weeks later, King walked out of the hospital with a cashier's check for $250,000. He had talked the doctors into backing his film. The movie never got made, and the doctors never got their money back. For Sports Century, I'm Chris Fowler.